Hi guys, welcome back. This video is part two. It's part two of a two-video set. If you haven't watched Translating Management Sozialer Dienstleistungen 1, watch it first. In the first video, we were considering the groundwork. We had this task, how to translate your degree title. And we considered criteria. What should a good translation be? We had various criteria. It should be real sounding, authentic sounding, and ideally authentic in the sense that it fits a real degree program somewhere. We noted also that it should match quite carefully the content of your degree. Okay, so we've got particular criteria for considering contenders for your degree titles translation. I want to start by thinking about a short list of alternatives. I'm going back now a few weeks. We talked about how we're focusing on the area of the social. Excuse me. You're trained to be managers, but not general managers, rather managers in agencies working in the social. I gave you a bunch of expressions to describe that particular field. Pause, natter with your partner. What terms did we have? I think we had something like 4 or 5 different expressions. Can you recall them? Pause here. We really had a few interesting terms a few weeks back. I gave you the British expression social care, noting how common it is in the UK. Americans talk about human services. It's broadly the American equivalent of that British term. Brits don't say human services. We then had a term, the social professions, which I noted is being used more and more. We had an expression of the social economy and a related idea of social enterprises. And we also considered social services. So you've got 5 different possibilities. Before we investigate these in depth, can we cross any off straight away? I think we can. Social professions is not broad enough for my liking. In particular, I haven't heard it being used in areas like education and healthcare. They wouldn't naturally use that expression. It's a popular expression of social workers, but we could argue that makes it too narrow for us. Good, so we're crossing that out. I'd also like to cross out social economy. We discussed this in my last video. We have this idea of Soziale Wirtschaft, but the people that chose Vechta's course's title didn't choose that, presumably for good reason. So let's remove that from consideration, leaving us with 3 interesting possibilities. Let's jump into these one by one. Option 1, social care management, BA. This is our first option. Obviously a bit British sounding. I told you social care was a British expression. What can we say? Does it have advantages? It does. It's authentic. This is something that you can study in the UK at bachelor's level at universities in Bristol, London, Sheffield. Interesting, nice old proper cities there. So we're immediately quite intrigued by this option. The content of the training is very similar to Vechta, and it's a concept with its own literature. I've already recommended this book in this course. This is something that people write about as well as talking about. Does this suggestion have any disadvantages? Yes, it does. It's British. It's not American. Americans understand it, but they would never naturally use it themselves. We also note it's usually studied together with healthcare management, so it's quite hard to separate them in the Anglo-Saxon world. So 2 disadvantages to bear in mind, but also a whole bunch of advantages. Here you are, contender number 1. Contender number 2 for your consideration, guys. A very, very similar suggestion here, again, going US this time. So stateside, we might talk about human services management, BA, I suggest. Actually, I'd probably say BS for BSc. Advantages, it's authentic. You can study it in the US at bachelor's level. So again, a pleasing finding there. At New York, Minneapolis, and in Wisconsin. So here you are, this is a real subject taught in real universities. The content seems to be very similar to Vechta. It's a concept of its own literature. Again, an American book cover there. I joked about how American titles always have the initial of their middle name in their name. You can see that below. I'm going to be Magnus Frampton one day. I really am. It's my goal. Disadvantages of this particular suggestion, it's US, it's not UK English. It'd be nice to have a more European translation, wouldn't it? On the other hand, if those Brits are going to be silly with all this Brexit nonsense, what the hell? Let's pick an American term just to annoy them. We also note it's sometimes studied together with healthcare management. I've got a feeling that this disadvantage is never going to go away. That's how the Anglo-Saxon world seems to see this whole area of healthcare and human services. You know, it seems to be an Anglo-Saxon perspective on the two disciplines. Good. So we've got two contenders, two serious contenders, but we've also got options around this idea of social services. If we use a translation like this one here, Management of Social Services, BA, it has advantages. Firstly, it sounds close to our original title. Now, that wasn't one of my criteria. I don't really care if German ears find it nice sounding, but in Germany, that may be a criteria that you have. So that's an advantage worth underlining. Disadvantages, it's very Denglish sounding, actually is what's spat out by Google Translate, and it really is a bit ungrammatical. I mean, you wouldn't say Management von Sozialen Dienstleistungen, would you? I suppose somebody would, I don't know. What do I know? I'm not even a native speaker. But you get my point. It doesn't sound good to native speaker ears. It is a bachelor's program, but at universities in Germany and Switzerland, not notable for being English-speaking places. Uganda is, kind of, and it's also taught in Finland. It's worth noting, though, that in Finland, social services means social work. I think in Italy as well. Curious, huh? It's not a term often used in the literature, so be careful with it in that sense. I've never seen a book with that title. It would be too ungrammatical to be a book title. So maybe treat that suggestion with care. This may be an improvement. Look, I've made it more grammatically appealing. Social Services Management BA. That looks better, doesn't it? Again, the same advantage as before. It sounds close to our original German title, pleasing German ears. Disadvantage is, it's a BA program at universities in Germany. Suggesting that we're not leaving Denglish far behind here. I didn't find any UK or US program on my rather crude Google search earlier today. It's also worth noting it's not common in the literature. Maybe for a good reason. This term can be confusing, and we've talked about this a couple of times in this course. Why? What did social services mean in English? There was a second meaning, wasn't there? Yeah, I'm guessing you remembered. Social services is the English term for Jugendamt, making this suggestion highly problematic. And I was in the States with a bunch of students from your study program, from Management Sozialer, Dienstleistungen. This is 10 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, 2009. And we were talking about what we did and what we were studying. And it was quite difficult for the students because they said we're students of social services management. And then the Americans said, oh, right, so you learn how to run social services. And they were like, is this working? We talk about the same thing here, because they thought they meant Jugendamt, and they started talking about child protection and all of those topics. So be careful with this confusion. I don't like confusion. Be careful with it. We have a trick. We have option 5. Let's be really, really smart. The Jugendamt is social services. What happens if we drop the S? So this is an interesting option 5, social service management, BA. Advantages, again, sounds close to our original German title. Doesn't confuse without the extra S. Another advantage, and this is nice, it's a real degree program somewhere in Canada. And we like Canada, don't we? Canada's a great country. It really is really a nice place. So that's interesting and obviously authentically English. But, there's a little but, at postgraduate level, not bachelor's level, and it is together with community leadership. But I can live with that. Community leadership is, of course, quite close to other areas of human services, social service, social care, whatever you want to call it. So that's something I can live with. Disadvantages, it's worth noting it is an uncommon expression in general. It even looks a bit wrong to me. It's not wrong, but it looks a bit wrong. And it's very uncommon in the literature. I don't think you'll find this in a book title in that formulation. So there you are, guys. I mean, it's good news, isn't it? We haven't had that real aha, I've got it moment, but we've got certainly 3 very serious contenders there. Whichever one you choose, well, you can take your pick. To conclude, we've got some really good possibilities here. We have to be mindful of questions of authenticity. I would use it in my selection criteria, certainly. And we note it is hard to find a good transatlantic term. You know, we want a term that Americans and Brits use equally. We're not going to ever find that. We have to accept that. But we can pick a UK term that Americans understand, or flip that over, a US term that Brits understand. In a sense, we're done, aren't we, guys? Happy days. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the videos. Any questions, we can talk about it in our video conferencing session. Well done, guys. See you soon.